The air over the remote stronghold, usually frigid and quiet, cracked with anticipation. King Kaelion Dravaris was coming. Elara stood hidden near the gatehouse windows, her body rigid inside the restrictive, dark gown that mirrored the stone walls, watching the procession arrive. Kaelion, framed by the cold, armed men of his personal guard, was every inch the king, towering, formidable, and radiating an alpha dominance so immense it felt like a physical pressure against her suppressed wolf. His visit was ostensibly for treaty negotiations, cementing an alliance vital to the security of the northern borders. But for Elara, his presence was a biological threat. His alpha power instinctively sought out any other true alpha in the vicinity, and the constant subtle probe of his aura was like a knife scraping against the bonds she used to cage her massive black wolf. She needed to be utterly invisible, yet she was responsible for overseeing his accommodations. The political tension was not only external. Leading the welcoming party was advisor Valerius, a powerful old guard senator and alpha from a rival pack. Valerius, pale and watchful, had long suspected the whispers surrounding the Wolf Keeper's true identity. He saw Elara's mere existence, unbonded and unsworn, as a liability, and her bloodline as a dangerous myth that needed to be definitively debunked. He needed her gone to secure his own influence over the king. As Kaelion dismounted, his storm-gray eyes swept the courtyard. They paused, not on the welcoming beta, but momentarily, devastatingly, on Elara's hidden window. The brief, intense contact sent a spike of pure, raw terror through her. Had he sensed it? Had he felt the ancient dark power struggling beneath her skin? Valerius, noticing the king's slight distraction, moved closer to Kaelion, a subtle, possessive gesture. "My lord," Valerius murmured, his voice dripping with condescension as he glanced toward Elara's hidden corner. "Our Lady Elara is dutiful, if perhaps too fragile for such grand events. A simple keeper, you see, not a wolf of consequence." It was a seed of poison, designed to solidify her weak image and dismiss her entirely. Kaelion, however, didn't confirm or deny the dismissal. He simply turned, his expression unreadable, and continued into the great hall, leaving Elara shivering. She knew that Valerius had fired his first shot. The king's arrival had not brought an alliance. It had brought a reckoning. The great hall shimmered under the light of 1,000 candles, but to Elara, it felt like an interrogation room. She had been commanded to attend the royal banquet, a cruelty arranged by Valerius to ensure her public exposure. She sat near the salt, as far from the high table as possible, maintaining the posture of a porcelain doll, quiet, fragile, and utterly inconsequential. Her fragile facade began to crack the moment her eyes met King Kaelion's across the expanse of polished oak and silver. He was seated in the place of honor, commanding the room with effortless, silent authority. And he was watching her, not with curiosity, but with a calculated, assessing gaze that penetrated the years of deception. He knew, not what she was, perhaps, but that she was something profound and dangerous. The king's awareness was a spotlight burning away her invisibility. The feast progressed, a blur of rich food and nervous chatter, until Valerius seized his opportunity. He rose, clinking his goblet for attention, his smile wide and malicious. "A toast to King Kaelion, and to the strength of the northern territories, a strength embodied by our warriors, and of course," he paused, letting his gaze sweep the hall until it landed on Elara, "our wolves." He walked slowly toward her peripheral table, adopting a tone of patronizing concern. "Lady Elara, you have served dutifully as keeper for many years. But tonight, in the presence of our king, many wonder why the keeper of the sacred grounds has never offered the courtesy of showing her own wolf. Is it shyness, dear lady, or merely the sad truth that the blood of the Wynthorne line is finally thinned out to nothing?" The hall fell silent, the tension sharp enough to slice the air. Every eye, including King Kaelion's, fixed on Elara. Valerius had perfectly executed his plan, publicly mocking her non-shifting status and questioning the honor of her ancient, if politically weak, bloodline. Elara felt the familiar cold terror, but beneath it, the caged black wolf stirred, a low, subsonic growl of pure, offended darkness. She kept her hands clasped tightly, forcing her face into a mask of polite, embarrassed confusion, the expected reaction of the fragile lady. Kaelion watched from the high table, resting his chin on a fist. He offered no intervention, no protective glance, no sign of disapproval toward Valerius. His silence was deafening. It was a clear, terrible message. This is your battle, lady. Prove your worth, or be destroyed. He was forcing her hand. Valerius waited, basking in the stunned silence, allowing Elara's humiliation to ferment. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of fear and the collective alpha pressure of the nobles demanding a response. "Well, Lady Elara," Valerius pressed, his voice sharp with triumph. "The king awaits your proof. We are pragmatic wolves, not sentimental fools. If you cannot shift, you are a burden to this stronghold, a mockery of your lineage, and, I must insist, a woman who must be removed from King Kaelion's court immediately." He had upped the ante. The terms were brutally clear. Failure to shift meant exile and disgrace. Shifting into her usual false form meant humiliation, which would permanently cement her low status. But Elara knew the true, fatal term. Shifting into the Black Wolf meant execution, as it confirmed the prophecies the powerful council would use to justify immediate civil war against Kaelion if he harbored her. Elara slowly rose, her movement drawing all focus. Every muscle screamed from the effort of holding the shadows within. She met Kaelion's gaze across the room and found him still watching, his eyes now piercing, demanding a reaction that was true, not manufactured. It was less a challenge and more a test. Show me what you are, or perish. The Black Wolf, sensing the ultimatum, roared inside her mind, a powerful urge to rip free and devour the insult. But Elara held fast, her mind racing through 7 years of self-denial. She could not accept exile. She could not accept permanent shame. If she was to be destroyed, it would be on her own terms, with one final terrifying assertion of her true self. Taking a breath that tasted of cold steel, Elara spoke, her voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the hall's oppressive silence. "Senator Valerius demands proof of my heritage, my lord," she announced, addressing Kaelion, thus bypassing the antagonist entirely. "And proof shall be provided. Let us adjourn to the courtyard. This display is not fit for the king's dinner table." It was not a request. It was an acceptance delivered with the icy authority of a true alpha, an authority Valerius was too shocked to recognize until it was too late. She had chosen the path of certain catastrophic exposure over the safety of the lie. The decision was, the Black Wolf would finally run free. The chill night air of the courtyard hit Elara like a physical blow, a stark contrast to the stifling warmth of the banquet hall. The assembly, nobles, guards, and the curious members of the local pack had swiftly followed, forming a wide circle around the frozen, snow-dusted ground. King Kaelion stood closest, his guards forming an intimidating wall behind him, his presence a dark, immovable sentinel. Valerius, his face flushed with greedy anticipation, shifted first. He emerged as a large, silver-gray alpha, handsome and powerful, though dwarfed by the legend Elara was about to unleash. He patted arrogantly, waiting for her to produce the small, sickly, false gray wolf she had sometimes faked in her younger days. Elara knelt, her ornate black gown pooling around her. The shift was the hardest thing she had ever done. For 7 years she had fought the power, binding it with every fiber of her will. Now, she had to loosen the chains just enough to let a wolf emerge but still maintain control. She pushed, willing a tiny, non-threatening form, a pale shadow of a wolf, but the Black Wolf had tasted freedom, and it was ravenous. The transformation began not with a graceful flow, but with a tearing agony that stole her breath. Her bones shrieked as they broke and reformed, her muscles swelling with forbidden power. She collapsed onto all fours, a guttural sound escaping her throat that was more roar than howl. The shift was violent, agonizing, and far beyond her control. As the dense, dark fur erupted across her skin, the shadows in the courtyard seemed to deepen and gather around her. The air temperature plummeted. The other wolves, including Valerius, began to whimper, their instincts screaming not of dominance but of pure, ancient terror. Then she stood. It was colossal, easily twice the size of Valerius's silver form. The coat was not merely black. It was the impenetrable, absolute black of a starless void, absorbing the candlelight and seeming to suck the very light out of the night. But the most terrifying feature was its eyes. Not gold or yellow like a normal alpha, but two burning orbs of molten, terrifying orange, alive with a feral intelligence that radiated raw, chaotic power. The ground, beneath the sudden weight and the sheer spiritual force of the beast, seemed to vibrate. Prophecy and reality merged in an instant. Elara Wynthorne, the fragile lady, was gone. Only the Black Alpha, the Shadow Queen of Prophecy, remained, unleashing 7 years of suppressed fury upon the frozen courtyard. Silence, deep and absolute, swallowed the courtyard. It was a vacuum created by the sudden, terrible presence of the Black Wolf. Valerius, the arrogant Silver Alpha, was the first to break. He collapsed onto his belly, whimpering, his dominance shattered by the primal recognition of superior, forbidden power. Around the circle, every shifter dropped into an involuntary, humiliating posture of submission, their faces buried in the snow. The Black Wolf didn't move. Its coat, shifting like liquid shadow, held the attention of every soul present, but its molten orange eyes were fixed on only one man, King Kaelion Dravaris. Kaelion stood tall, refusing the instinctual command to kneel, yet his own alpha aura, usually a fortress of cold, unyielding power, wavered, a shield finely cracked. The recognition in his storm-gray eyes was immediate and devastating. He didn't see a myth or a prophecy. He saw his equal, his counterpoint, the living darkness to his powerful light. Then it happened. It was not a gentle whisper of destiny, but a violent, concussive force that slammed into both their souls. A bolt of raw, spiritual energy, hot as volcanic fire and fast as lightning, shot from the Black Wolf's orange gaze straight into Kaelion's chest. The mate bond snapped into place with a soundless, mind-shattering crack, confirming the impossible connection between the most feared monster and the most powerful king. Kaelion let out a sharp, choked gasp, staggering back half a step, the first sign of weakness anyone had ever witnessed in him. He clutched his chest, the overwhelming, undeniable pull of the bond hitting him with the force of 1,000 years of fate. The forbidden, chaotic power of the Black Wolf was now inextricably linked to the iron stability of the Alpha King. His perfectly crafted composure was utterly broken, replaced by a mixture of shock, fury, and a terrifying, desperate possessiveness. The Black Wolf felt it too, the agonizing intrusion of light and order into its shadow-bound existence, a demand for submission that it could not, would not, obey. A low, thunderous growl rumbled in its massive chest, not of submission, but a challenge directed straight at the king. The creature took one deliberate, heavy step toward Kaelion, its eyes burning the furious question, "You broke me. What now?" The shift was broken violently, not by Elara's will, but by Kaelion's raw alpha command. The agonizing reverse transformation left Elara collapsed and human again, panting heavily in the snow, her body slick with sweat and tears of pain. Before anyone could move, Kaelion was there, not with tenderness, but with a terrifying, contained violence. He scooped her up, his touch burning with the freshly cemented mate bond, and marched toward the stronghold's most isolated chamber, leaving his stunned court and the whimpering Valerius behind. Inside the stone-cold room, Kaelion slammed the heavy oak door shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot. He released Elara, and she immediately backed away, clutching the tattered remains of her gown. His eyes, usually ice gray, were turbulent, swirling with a mixture of possessiveness and profound political rage. 7 years, he growled, his voice low and dangerous, vibrating with the authority of the mate bond. 7 years you walked under my roof, a powder keg waiting for a spark, while your own people were allowed to mock and humiliate you, believing you worthless. Do you comprehend the cataclysm you just unleashed? The prophecy is confirmed. The council will call for your head before dawn, and by extension they will challenge my claim to the throne for harboring you. He advanced, forcing her to confront his fury. Why, Elara? Why hide such power, only to reveal it in the most public, most politically disastrous way possible? Elara pushed back, matching his intensity despite her exhaustion. My hiding was not a denial of your rule. It was a form of protection. For your stability. The prophecy is a lie used by the old guard to justify fear. If I shift, they kill me. If I hide, I survive. And my power, she spat the word, is mine. It is not yours to judge, nor was my suffering yours to protect me from. You watched me endure Valerius's malice, King. You forced my hand. The air crackled between them, thick with the conflicting demands of the mate bond, a primal urge to claim and protect, battling the bitter reality of betrayal and political defiance. She was right. He had watched, cold and testing. Kaelion finally broke eye contact, running a hand roughly through his hair. The time for hiding is over, he stated, his voice now flat, acknowledging the brutal truth. We are bound, and they saw it. The revelation of the Black Alpha, coupled with our unavoidable bond, means war is no longer inevitable. It has already begun. They will see you as a threat to eliminate, and me as a king compromised by fate. The raw political fear in Kaelion's words sliced through Elara's defenses. They were two rulers, newly bound by fate, staring down a certain civil war. She saw the heavy crown he wore, the burden of the territories he governed, and the immense controlled power he was now gambling everything on. Kaelion turned back, his gaze settling on her not with anger, but with a new, terrifying resolution. The Alpha King's inner calculation was complete. The Council will send assassins, not envoys, he admitted, his voice hardening to iron. If I disavow the bond, they weaken my bloodline and fracture the kingdom. If I keep you hidden, they accuse me of harboring a rogue weapon. There is only one path now. I must claim the danger you represent and make it the strength of my throne. He took a deliberate step toward her, the bond tightening between them like a chain of molten gold. I saw your power, Elara. That colossal beast is not chaos. It is an arsenal. I need it. I need you, not as a subservient mate, but as the Shadow Queen who can defend what I built. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, not from weakness, but from the magnitude of his choice, and traced the line of her jaw. Embrace the prophecy. We rule together. The air thickened, not with conflict, but with acceptance. Elara, seeing the king shed his stoic control and embrace the madness of their connection, felt the last of her fear crumble. She lifted her chin, accepting his gaze. Then claim me, King Kaelion, and let us show them what happens when shadow and light are finally united. He didn't hesitate. His mouth crashed down on hers, not in a kiss of tenderness, but a devastating act of merging power. The kiss was fire and ice, order and chaos. The mate bond, previously a painful chain, but now flared into a consuming inferno, weaving the raw, dark strength of her black wolf essence with the structured, immense power of his Alpha King blood. It was the final, unyielding claim, sealing their destinies. When Kaelion broke the kiss, his eyes were glowing faintly with pure alpha dominance, his face carved in stone. He pulled her ruined gown straight, settling her into a queen's posture. They walked out, shoulder to shoulder, back into the tense courtyard where the assembly waited, still kneeling or standing in terrified shock. Kaelion's voice, amplified by his fully unleashed alpha aura and the newly integrated power of the Black Wolf, was a thunderclap. "Rise!" he commanded, and the shifters scrambled to obey. He held Elara's hand, a terrifying symbol of forbidden power and absolute ownership. His gaze swept over the crowd, landing last on the still cowering Valerius. "Let it be known," Kaelion declared, his voice a promise and a threat, "that Elara Wynthorne, the Black Alpha, is now the blood-sworn queen of these territories. Let those who object step forward and challenge the will of their king and the judgment of fate." He paused, allowing the silence to stretch, lethal and absolute. No one moved. The challenge had been issued, and the king, backed by a terrifying new power, had won the first battle. Kaelion's challenge hung in the frozen air, unanswered. The silence confirmed his victory, but it was Elara, now the Black Queen, who stepped forward to enact the necessary ruthless cleanup. She released Kaelion's hand, the movement deliberate and weighted with a chilling new authority that belonged only to her. She approached the antagonist, Valerius, who remained hunched over in his silver wolf form, unable to lift his eyes. Elara did not speak to the wolf, but to the man within. "Senator Valerius," Elara's voice was low, devoid of warmth or mercy, cutting through the remaining tension like a razor. "You sought to destroy me through humiliation, believing the king's claim would be weakened by my perceived failure. Instead, you succeeded only in revealing the very power you feared. You have sowed the seeds of war. Now, you will reap the immediate harvest." She did not offer forgiveness, only cold, absolute choice. "You have two paths, Senator. You may accept eternal exile, stripping your title, your wealth, and your loyalty to the Council, living out your days as a lone, nameless rogue, never to set foot in the Northern Territories again. Or, you may perform the blood submission rite to your king and queen right here before this assembly. You will be stripped of your alpha rank and serve as a beta under my direct command for the remainder of your life. Choose, Valerius. Exile or servitude. But know this, delay is death." The sheer weight of the choice, death of pride or death of existence, crushed Valerius. After a moment of agonizing silence, the silver wolf whined, a sound of utter defeat, and slowly, painstakingly, began the painful, humiliating ritual of submission. The sight of the proud, powerful senator humbling himself before the Shadow Queen cemented Elara's new order more effectively than any decree. With Valerius broken and the immediate threat neutralized, Kaelion turned to his guards. "Prepare the retinue. We ride immediately for the capital. The council must be met with fact, not fear." Elara didn't shift back to her human form. She looked at Kaelion, a silent agreement passing between them, and with a surge of renewed strength, the Black Wolf took its place by his side. Its gigantic, shadow-black form, with eyes of burning orange, stood sentinel as Kaelion mounted his warhorse. Together, the king and the monstrous wolf, the union of light and shadow, departed the remote stronghold, leaving behind a terrified, subjugated assembly and the clear message that the old world had just ended. Their war had just begun. Weeks later, the oppressive grandeur of the imperial capital's grand throne room was a crucible. Every noble, council member, and foreign envoy was packed into the hall, their faces a tapestry of fear, defiance, and reluctant curiosity. This was not a celebration. It was a final, unavoidable reckoning. The air, usually stale with protocol, vibrated with contained power. Elara stood before the ancestral dais, her posture perfected by years of necessary invisibility, now amplified by the immense, chaotic strength of the Black Wolf coursing beneath her skin. She wore a coronation gown of crushed black velvet and woven silver, designed to look less like regal attire and more like solidified shadow. The crown, a ring of sharp, dark iron, felt cold and heavy on her brow. But the true center of all attention was the black wolf. It was not chained or hidden. It was fully manifested, colossal and terrifying, lying prone and watchful at the foot of the steps, its head resting near Elara's dark slippers. Its molten orange gaze slowly tracked the movements of the assembled court, serving as a silent, undeniable enforcement of Kaelion's will. King Kaelion, standing beside her, looked like a pillar of granite, his alpha light radiating powerfully against her shadow. He lifted his hand, silencing the apprehensive murmurs, and gestured to Elara. She stepped forward to the golden microphone, a relic of older, grander courts, and the single magnified sound of her heels clicking on the marble floor seemed to shake the vast chamber. "You came here expecting terror," Elara began, her voice steady and deep, carrying a resonance that demanded total obedience. "You came expecting the madness of prophecy. You fear the Black Alpha, and you fear the darkness she represents." She let the silence stretch, forcing them to swallow their judgment. "I am not here to change your fear," she stated, a cold declaration of intent. "I am here to tell you that your fear is justified, but where you saw chaos, King Kaelion saw a shield. The shadow that was destined to destroy these lands is now bound to protect them. Every assassin sent by the council, every political maneuver, every whisper of treason will be met by the strength I wield." She raised her iron-crowned head, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, stopping only briefly on the now-disgraced Senator Valerius, who was among the lower-ranking beta seats, pale and submissive. "I am Elara, the Black Alpha Queen," she concluded, the primal title ringing through the hall. "Let those who fear the darkness know that the darkness is now watching them, and it is armed." Kaelion stepped closer, placing a proprietary hand on the small of her back. The physical contact sent a visible ripple of power through the hall, fusing the Light King and the Shadow Queen into one terrifying ruling force. Together they turned, facing the assembled court, their combined power a promise of brutal, absolute rule. The old world of secrecy and politics was burned away. The age of the Black Queen had begun.